Alright, Trekkies and Trekkers, now it's time to look at episode 2 of Deep Space Nine Season 3, The Search, Part 2. On the shore of the Great Link Ocean, on his newly discovered homeworld, Odo faces other changelings and Major Kira standing on the sideline. A changeling in female form welcomes Odo to his home and explains he was newly formed when he left them. Odo has many questions, and soon it sounds like interrogation. But Kira relaxes him, explaining that it is not a police investigation. The female changeling explains the link, and when Odo says he has been alone all his life, she offers her hand to reinforce his welcome with a partial link. Another changeling cautions her with concern it is too soon, but she insists. This affects Odo deeply, as he realizes that he has truly found his home and his people. Commander's Log Supplemental. It's been 6 days since we had to abandon the Defiant after the Jem'Hadar attack. We still know what happened to the rest of the crew. Dr. Bashir and I have plotted a course back to the wormhole. Whether the shuttle can get us back there or not is questionable at best. Our engines are failing, our external sensors are barely functioning, and life support systems are at 20% and dropping. In the shuttlecraft, Awari Sisko is dictating a report on the loss or capture of the Defiant by the Jem'Hadar and the unknown status of the rest of her crew, except Dr. Bashir, who was in the shuttle with him. Suddenly, the shuttle shutters and Bashir and Sisko try and get the sensors to work so they can find out what is causing the turbulence. They speculate that it may be a tractor beam when they hear something behind them. They both turn and note that the hatch mechanism is starting to rotate, indicating that someone is opening the hatch from the outside. Not knowing who it may be, they both arm their phasers and prepare to defend themselves. The door slowly opens and they're surprised by the appearance of Chief O'Brien, followed quickly by Jadzia Dax. They were rescued and other ships are looking for the rest of the Defiant's crew. Dax indicates that there is a big surprise waiting for them back at Deep Space Nine. On the Changeling's homeworld, Kira and Odo are waiting in an arbitorium. Odo is getting impatient and Kira is trying to calm him down. When the female changeling returns, a brief discussion ensues about changeling history and why they don't trust solids. She enjoins Major Kira from sending any message that may be traced to the planet, as the changelings value their isolation. The female changeling then begins giving Odo some shape-changing lessons. When Kira goes off to the shuttle to try and get an untraceable message for the Sisko, disguised as elevated background radiation, something she learned while in the Bajoran Resistance. Sisko is disembarking onto Deep Space Nine when he is met in air like by Admiral Elena Nechayev, who informs him that the treaty delegation from the Dominion has already arrived. They discuss some background information, then the Admiral informs Sisko that one of the delegates would like to see him the moment he arrives. Sisko enters the suite and meets Barath, a Vord who claims that he is one of the founders of the Dominion. They have a brief discussion about trust and future alliances. On the upper deck of the promenade, Bashir is greeted by Garrick, the resident Cardassian tailor. As they exchange pleasantries, they pass a Jem'Hadar soldier looking down on the main promenade deck. Garrick informs Bashir that the Central Command is in favor of the treaty, but indicates some misgivings about it, noting an old Cardassian proverb that states enemies make dangerous friends. As they continue their discussion, they encounter Romulan Sub-Commander T'Rul, who is very upset and informs them that the Romulans were excluded from the negotiations. She warns that if the Federation attempts a treaty with the Dominion without the Romulan Star Empire's approval, it will mean war. In one of Defiant's shuttlecraft on the Changeling's homeworld, Kira configures the shuttle's communications system transmitter signal and is informed by the craft's computer that it cannot be sent. This is due to excessive external interference from a subsurface power source and analysis not possible due to a polymetallic substance in the surrounding rock. When Kira is frustrated by this, Odo arrives. He is exhausted from shape-shifting lessons and goes off to regenerate, leaving Kira alone with her frustration. In his office, Sisko looks extremely concerned when Steph announces the arrival of Admiral Nechayev. They get into a discussion regarding the Romulans' exclusion from the treaty talks. Admiral Nechayev makes the point that if the Dominion and the Federation create this alliance, then the Romulans will be irrelevant. This leaves Sisko deeply troubled. Sitting in the garden on the Changeling homeworld, Odo and the female Changeling have a fairly detailed discussion about Changeling history, including the fact that solids have been hunting and persecuting their kind for eons, and Odo's place in their history. They then embrace each other and merge into a link. Meanwhile, Kira is facing a large metallic door and scanning of the Starfleet tricorder. She knows that this is an anomaly since changelings shouldn't have need for doors. She then contacts the shuttle's computer and asks it to scan the door. and is frustrated when the computer tells her that there is too much interference for it to do so. In Quark's, Bashir and O'Brien are drinking synthales in the house and discussing the new treaty with Quark. The discussion is interrupted by a Jem'Hadar officer who picks a fight with O'Brien when he tells him he is in his way and throws him across the bar. When Bashir comes to his defense, he is also attacked by the Jem'Hadar and thrown up against a wall until finally Security Chief Eddington breaks up the fight. Bashir insists that the Jem'Hadar will be incarcerated for what he did to O'Brien, but the Doctor is reminded by Eddington that the Jem'Hadar have carte blanche on the station, for the moment. Sisko has a troubled meal in his quarters with his son Jake. The elder Sisko is very distracted and lost in thought when Dax comes in and informs him that she has been transferred as science officer to the USS Lexington without the commander's approval. While they are discussing this turn of events, Bashir calls him and requests that they meet concerning Chief O'Brien. Moments later, a very angry Sisko storms into a meeting between Admiral Cheyev and Borath and demands explanations as to why Dax has been reassigned without his consent, while the Jem'Hadar who attacked O'Brien is walking the station free, and why the Federation is risking a war with the Romulans to sign a treaty with an organization they barely know or trust. The Cheyev tells Sisko that the Federation is pulling out of the sector, and all of the Starfleet officers on the station are to be reassigned. Bajor's request for Federation membership is being suspended indefinitely, and the Federation was withdrawn from Deep Space Nine and handed the station and Bajor over to the Dominion. Sisko asks about what happens if Bajorans aren't happy with being handed over to the Dominion. Red tells Sisko he's sure they'll raise no objections. It makes it clear that Jem'Hadar will only be sent in if they resist. The Cheyev promises Sisko that he'll be promoted to captain for his work. The Admiral states the Dominion will control the wormhole as well, calling it the price for peace. Sisko responds that the price of peace is too damn high, and has to talk to the Federation's negotiating team before the treaty is signed. The Cheyev then tells him that it was signed this afternoon, and congratulates Sisko for helping make it possible. In the laboratorium of the changeling planet, Odo, in the shape of an Arbizan vulture, flies in, lands, and changes back to normal form, as Kira watches in amazement. They begin to talk, and an exhilarated Odo gushes about being a vulture, feeling the air current beneath his wings, and soaring past treetops. Kira then asks the changeling for help with the door that she found. Odo also wonders about the door, and who or what could be using them if the changelings are not. On the promenade back at the station, Sisko is drinking a cup of coffee in the Replomat when Garrick walks in, complimenting Sisko on the job he has done over the past 2 years, but notes that when Starfleet returns to the sector, it will be to fight the Bajorans, who have just formed an alliance with the Romulans against the Dominion and their allies. In the ensuing conversation, Garrick sits at Sisko's table and detects a note of bitterness in Sisko's voice. The Cardassian mentions that he shares that bitterness. He further opines that, after a great deal of thought, he can only conclude that their leaders have gone insane, that it's a pity that they are both committed to following the orders of their respective leadership. Sisko agrees with the pity part. At this point, Sisko states his surprise at how much they seem to think alike, to which Garrick notes that life is full of surprises. Suddenly, from down the promenade, T'Rul appears, yelling at Sisko while being chased by 2 Jem'Hadar soldiers. Sisko and Garrick get up, and just when T'Rul reaches them, the Jem'Hadar manage to shoot her in the back with a hand weapon. She falls into Sisko's arms, dead, just as the soldiers arrive. Sisko immediately gives her over to Garrick and begins to fight the Jem'Hadar in hand-to-hand combat. The Jem'Hadar overpowers Sisko while Garrick looks on helplessly. In the station security office, Garrick enters, followed by Dax and Bashir. Dax demands to see Sisko. Eddington, seated behind the security desk, says that no one's allowed to see the commander without authorization from Admiral Cheyev. Through a ruse, Garrick manages to knock out Eddington with a hypo spray. They free Sisko and take phasers from the office's armory. Dax informs Sisko that O'Brien is waiting for their landing pad C with the USS Rio Grande and a full complement of photon torpedoes. Sisko asks Dax how she knew that they need torpedoes, and she answers that she anticipated that Sisko wanted to destroy the wormhole to prevent further Dominion forces from arriving from the Gamma Quadrant. He agrees, and they begin their run to landing pad C. On the Changeling's homeworld, Odo is examining the door of the caravan and makes a startling discovery. The door is not meant to keep people out, rather to keep whatever is inside in. The locking mechanism is a strange shape that only a Changeling can use without resorting to special tools, and Odo morphs his hand to the required shape. In the station's quarters, Dax, Garrick, Bashir, and Sisko running toward the docking ring when they encountered Jem'Hadar patrol. During the ensuing battle, Garrick is shot and killed. The rest of the group move on, and there is another battle at the airlock to landing pad C. They enter the Rio Grande safely, where O'Brien is waiting for them and they launch without further incident. As soon as they launch, they head directly for the wormhole. 30 seconds from arrival, Admiral Nechayev, with Borth at her side, contacts the Rio Grande from the station and orders Sisko to stand down, but Sisko refuses. Borth then threatens them with the Jem'Hadar, and Sisko states that they had better not expect any reinforcements for about 70 years. Sisko turns to the forward viewpoint of the Rio Grande and sees the wormhole open for them. It then orders attack planner Theta, and O'Brien turns hard to port and launches 3 torpedoes into the wormhole. The wormhole implodes, and the blinding light of that event illuminates the interior of the Rio Grande. Meanwhile, in the underground complex of the Changeling's homeworld, Odo is working on the lock mechanism by his right hand shapeshift into a locking pick tool and finally opens it for him. As the door opens, it reveals 2 armed and ready Jem'Hadar guards who immediately take them into custody and march them deeper into the underground complex. They enter an underground chamber filled with various types of equipment and 5 inclined shelves. The 3 tables on the left hold Bashir, Dex, and Tarul, and 2 tables in the back hold Sisko and O'Brien. Borth and 2 Vorta technicians are also present. A 3rd Jem'Hadar stands guard in the chamber. Borth invites him, and Kira runs up to Sisko and tries to talk to him. Borth informs her that they are unconscious because he's running an experiment on them. Kira's being suspicious and concerned, demanding to know what sort of experiment the Vorta has been running. Borth answers that it is a simulation exercise designed to determine how they will respond to an attempt by the Dominion to gain a foothold in the Alpha Quadrant, to measure how much they will be willing to sacrifice in order to avoid a war. However, according to his findings, they're extremely stubborn, and Borth is thankful that he is not the one who has to solve that problem. At that moment, a female voice states, "But I do." All within the chamber look toward the entrance where the female changeling has arrived. Odo is surprised that she knew about the experiment, but Kira figures it out quicker and challenges the changeling, saying that she belongs to the Dominion. The changeling corrects Kira by implying that the changelings are the Dominion. Odo's awestruck as he realizes that his people are the founders, the leaders of the Dominion. She admits to irony that the Hunted now control the destinies of hundreds of other races. Odo now challenges her as to why the founders should need to control anyone. She replies, "What you control can't hurt you," and that following maltreatment by solids when they were attempting to explore the galaxy many years ago, they set themselves the task of imposing order on a chaotic universe. Kira objects, saying the order of the founders should actually be called murder. The founder states that what the solids call it is irrelevant to the founders. Odo then asks how the founders could justify the deaths of so many people, to which Shapeshifter answers that the solids have always been a threat to them and that's the only justification they need. Odo retorts that these solids have never harmed the founders, implying that none of the Alpha Quadrant solids have ever harmed the founders, and that the Federation is just like what the founders used to be, explorers and researchers. The founder counters that the solids are nothing like us. At this point, Odo pauses to consider and then answers that neither is he. He states that his whole life has been devoted to the pursuit of justice and that justice means nothing to the founders. The founder doesn't challenge that, rather, she believes that Odo would rather have order than justice and that the Great Link will satisfy his need for order. Odo declines, acknowledging the temptation of the offer, but maintaining that he already has a link to his comrades. Odo then turns to Borth and orders him to wake up the prisoners and that they are leaving. Borth objects, and Odo, turning to the founder, states that he is leaving with his friends. The founder objects and looks shocked when Odo confirms his intent. The founder says that no changeling has ever harmed another. To this, Odo replies that whatever she does to his friends, she also have to do to him. The founder concedes the point and confirms Odo's orders to Borath, the Vorta, but she warns him that next time they will not be so generous. The Vorta technicians move the unconscious Defiant crew, removing leads, patch cords, and devices. As they do so, the crew looks up slightly dazed and asking what happened. They all have various confused memories of the Rio Grande and collapse of the wormhole, except Tarul, who remembers being shot by Jem'Hadar soldiers. Kira explains that none of them remembers real and that they've been held in the chamber since the Jem'Hadar captured them in the Defiant and that they've been in a simulation. Sisko demands an explanation from Borath, but the Vorta merely informs the commander that the Defiant is in orbit and they can transport up to it when they are ready. Odo informs Sisko that he will be remaining behind for a few moments. Kira indicates that she'll come up with Odo. Odo promises Sisko that he will explain everything later, but that he and the others must leave immediately. Sisko then taps his comm badge and has himself and his crew beamed up to the Defiant. As Odo and the female changeling walk through the Repertorium to the Great Link, the Defender expresses her wish that Odo will someday return to them. When Odo expresses doubt of that, she points out that he'll always be an outsider with the solids. Odo states that being an outsider isn't so bad. It gives a unique perspective, and that it is a pity that the Founders have forgotten that. The Founder says that she might visit him, but the Alpha Quadrant seems racked with chaos, and they could use some order. At this point, Odo warns her that imposing her form of order on the Alpha Quadrant may prove more difficult than she imagines. The Founder walks out into the Great Link and, turning back to Odo, states, "We will miss you, Odo, but you will miss us even more." With that, she emerges back into the Great Link. When she is gone, Kira approaches Odo. As they hold hands, Kira taps on Odo's Bajoran comm badge, and the two of them are transported back to the Defiant. So now let's look at some trivia surrounding this episode. This is the first episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine to be written by Jonathan Frakes, whose first directorial stint after Star Trek The Next Generation. He directed 2 further episodes, Meridian and Past Tense Part 2, and made a guest appearance in Defiant, all in Season 3, as well as directing 3 episodes of Star Trek Voyager and at least two of Star Trek Discovery. The bulk of the episode continually splits between reality, Kira and Odo on the Founder's homeworld, and the psychological projections created in the experiment being conducted on Sisko and the others. This is masked by the normal formula of having A and B stories. Only the last minute of the episode is the psychological experiment revealed. Discounting the psychological projections, this is one of a few episodes not to feature any scenes on the real Deep Space Nine. It's also in 2 episodes, the other being Children of Time, to be set entirely in the Gamma Quadrant. The female changeling decides in this episode that war is the only option for the Alpha Quadrant, and from this point forward a Cold War existed until the episodes In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light. The monolith that is seen several times in the background of the garden on the Founder's planet is almost identical to the monolith which appeared in the episode The Alternate as a relic of Odo's people. After this episode, the Vorta did not appear again until the Season 4 episode To the Death. Borath, the Vorta researcher who was also supposedly founder in the psychological projections Sisko and the others experienced, was originally supposed to be Eris, the first Vorta encountered by the Federation in the Jem'Hadar. The character who changed with actress Molly Hagan was unavailable. When Odo says he is referred to as a changeling on occasion, he could be referring to the first season episode Vortex, in which Croydon calls him a changeling, and the second season episode Shadow Play, in which Taya does so. The line, "No changeling ever harmed another," returned in the Season 3 episodes Heart of Stone, The Die is Cast, and The Adversary, and the Season 4 finale Broken Link. This is despite the fact that Odo is frequently threatened by both the Founders themselves, as well as their agents. The female changeling fulfills her promise to visit Odo in the episode Heart of Stone, albeit by pretending to be Kira. The scene where Bashir is intercepted by Garak upon arriving back at the station, in the background the end of the set can be seen as the walkway ends railing end abruptly. In addition, the whole promenade background seems to be sloping down. This is only partially concealed by the Jem'Hadar standing in the front. Interesting. So overall, I think this is a pretty darn good episode, and yeah, let's just say that I am not a fan of the Founders at all, so yeah. So overall, I give The Search Part 2 4 Warp Cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in a bit as we take a look at the next episode, The House of Quark. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.